ultimately there's two very different prices for college. One for the informed buyer and one for the uninformed buyer. And what we mean by that is yeah, you can just take what they tell you, here's the sticker price, and go ahead and pay it, or you can do a little bit of the back stuff and prepare for it and understand exactly what you're getting yourself into and be aware of what's going to be asked of you, whether it's a public or private institution, on the forms, and what you have and where the money is, which can lower those costs. It's of course, it's death, right? Death is, that's the thing for everybody, right? That hey, I don't have it. But when you look at the top four concerns, right, the number two concern besides dying is saving for retirement. That's my need. I've got to have money set aside. I'm worried that I'm not going to have enough. And then, with the whole thing that's gone on over the past year or so, it's about job security. But then number four right there is paying for a child's education. There are more than 250 colleges right now that charge more than $50,000 a year for tuition, right? That's one child, so just do that out 4 years. That's $200,000. But the reality is, as that little disclosure says in the middle of the page, that only just over half of the freshmen who are entering college actually graduate in 6 years. The way aid is factored and figured is that the people who are getting squeezed the most are your median to upper class families in terms of aid. Ultimately it comes down to that the money that is used for college funding can't be spent on retirement savings. This talks about that from a perspective of instead of the funds going to pay for college, I took the money and used it for retirement, right? And if the cost of college, so if you took an average 4-year college cost of, let's say that was $50,000 a year, like we said, and when I inflated that for 15 years at 5%, it would cost me $78,000 a year. So EFC, right? That's the expected family contribution. That's what this all boils down to, right? Right? EFC is what that's Craig or myself, right? In this particular case, because we have kids who are in college, what we're expected to pay, right? That's what it's a whole process, and I'll go through that in terms of dealing with it. It's parents and student income, their liquid assets. They take all of that into consideration and say, here's what the EFC is going to be, right? And the EFC becomes the minimum that you are expected to pay or contribute on behalf of your student. But what you want to have is that there are differences between public institutions and private colleges or private universities, which leaves you with a gap of $1,500, right? So if you got this unsubsidized loan, this federal student loan, $5,500 that the student qualified for, that's if you filled out the FAFSA form, there would still be $1,500 that's missing between what your expected family contribution that they feel that you could contribute and the student loan. So it ends up costing you $16,500 for this institution. But when we come to the private institution, right, when we come to the private college, right, the private college may actually give scholarships and loans that equal the $45,000, right, because they're in competition with the public universities, and depending on your child, depending on the availability and whether or not they would be there, there's the possibility that they could award a scholarship or a grant or something like that for your child, which could amount to what's missing between your expected family contribution and the amount of actual tuition, which means that it's $15,000 to you, but $15,000 to the private institution, where it's $16,500 to go to the public institution. So there are situations where just because the sticker price looks much higher, it doesn't necessarily necessarily merit out. A lot of times those public institutions, I'm just going to use UMass as the example here in Massachusetts, they don't have the ability to offer additional funding. So it's basically you get, here's what the sticker price is, here's the Stafford loan, and there's really there might be some scholarship or some money available, but there's really no grants available. So, again, it's looking at where some of this comes in, right? So it's the difference there between what you might be on the hook for, your EFC, right? The gap between the two, and then how you're going to deal with the debt financing from there, because that's ultimately what's going to lead to that, right? Right. So then you have free money, right? So free money, and as we know, free money is the best kind of money. Yes, that is the best kind of money. Right. So that's what Craig had mentioned. Craig mentioned about the merit-based scholarships or need-based financial aid, where it's a grant. Basically, the school is saying you qualify for this amount. We're going to give you, $10,000 on an annual basis off the sticker price based off your need type of thing. So then you have cheap money. Cheap money is like we talked about. Those are the subsidized loans. That's from the government. Those are the ones that have all been right now been obeyed at that point. There's an abeyance on that. You don't have to fund them right now until it's got extended until January now. I believe January 4th now, and they've still put that abeyance in place that you don't have to pay on those loans until January. You get into this is the shortfall, and these are the gaps. This is where, like Craig talked about, tapping into, that says home equity, but whether it's retirement accounts, it's other places that necessarily you don't want to tap into to fund for this need because of what's there. This is all on FAFSA. And FAFSA, the deadline the window opens on October 1st every year. Again, funds for college should be funds for college. Funds for retirement should be funds for retirement. Like Craig said, we shouldn't be dipping into one to pay for the other. You don't want to be taking away from one, being able to save for future or down the road, or two, putting money into something that's going to impact or negatively affect your ability to get financial aid, because that is one of those areas, right, where it's yes, hey, maybe if I increased my retirement contribution, one, I lower my income, so I have now lower income. I have less assets because I put the money into my retirement account. And when FAFSA or CSS, looks at it, it's in a retirement account, which really is not supposed to be used for this. Again, if you're paying back your mortgage instead of funding for your retirement, it's the reverse, because equity in your property counts against you, because they think you can take that out and use that. So this just talks about all the different vehicles and how they work. One of the things that you can do that Craig sort of alluded to with this is, just because the school comes back and says, hey, here's what we're going to give you, doesn't necessarily mean that's the end all be all. This is generally calculated off a formula, between the EFC, between FAFSA, between what they do. And, let's face it, if we got a school that's got, 50 to 60,000 students going through it, how many of these forms are they actually seeing and going through? You can appeal. And I recommend appealing, unless you're really comfortable with the number that you got, to making an appeal. Just to say, hey, look, take a look at this again and tell me, because they're generally not going to turn around and screw you. They're not going to say, oh, wait, we gave you too much. They're not going to do that. What they'll say is, no, the formula worked for you. That's where you're at. But what can happen there is that they may then say, well, okay, here's what we're going to do. We were going to give you $7,000. We're going to give you $9,000 or $10,000 now, type of thing.
Have questions? Ask us. We can help with that. You can email Craig at crichardson@aresfoundation.org, or you can visit the website to learn more about what we do and how we might be able to help you. www.aresfoundation.org. Want to see more of this recording? Go to www.aresfoundation.org/events. If you know an organization or community support group that could benefit from one of our workshops, reach out to Tom T. Alessi at AresFoundation.org. Our mission is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money.